Have you ever gazed into another's eyes and sensed a repugnant shadow lurking beneath the surface? Not a trivial fabrication, but a calculated deception, meticulously engineered to subjugate you without a whisper of detection. Most individuals drift through existence, utterly oblivious to this reality. They boast of their intuition. They rely on a gut instinct. They foolishly believe that surface-level guides or viral trends offer genuine insight. But here's the malignant truth. You are being dissected, manipulated, and subverted every single day by architects of influence who grasp one reality you do not. The human psyche possesses hidden switches, dark psychological catalysts that bypass cognitive logic entirely. And the most petrifying realization, these tools are not reserved for the depraved or the criminal. They are wielded by the colleague who effortlessly secures the promotion, the companion who skillfully weaponizes guilt, even the partner who understands precisely, exactly how to trigger your vulnerabilities until you find yourself offering the apology. A landmark investigation from the University of California, Berkeley, led by Dr. Keltner, exposed a chilling revelation. After scrutinizing thousands of power dynamics, they discovered that the most dominant figures are not the loudest, nor the most brilliant, and they are certainly not the most ethical. They are the masters of subtle, virtually invisible, psychological governance. They decode micro-expressions before a word is uttered. They identify emotional leaks you are unaware you are shedding, and they recalibrate their persona in real time to steer your cognition without a trace of friction. But here is where the corruption deepens. The majority of what you have been taught regarding human behavior is deliberately superficial. It is crafted to provide an illusion of intelligence while maintaining your impotence. Because if the masses truly comprehended these forbidden mechanisms, the entire social hierarchy would crumble instantly. So today I am dismantling the facade. We are not discussing the benign, the surface level. We are exposing the raw, forbidden techniques utilized by the elite 1% who pierce through every mask. Methods so potent, they can unmask a deceiver in an instant, expose ulterior motives before the first syllable, and grant you a ravenous advantage in every interaction. But be warned, once these truths are absorbed, they cannot be ignored. You will witness them pervasively, in the boardroom, in your intimate connections, even in the most mundane dialogue. And the question remains, when you finally perceive how profoundly people manipulate, how your life has been orchestrated by invisible threads, will you utilize this wisdom to shield yourself, or will you evolve into one of them? Because here is the primary truth most are too fragile to confront. Everyone is engaged in this conflict, whether they confess it or not. And currently, you are defeated, but in the moments that follow, I am delivering the exact instruments to reverse the hierarchy, starting with the singular signal that betrays a person's authentic intent more than any spoken lie. Most are entirely blind to it, but once it is seen, everything changes. You have been conditioned, repeatedly, to believe that decoding human intent is merely about identifying tells. Folded arms signify defensiveness. Averted gazes imply dishonesty. A smile that fails to reach the eyes is a counterfeit. And certainly, occasionally those observations hold weight. But here is why your current understanding is perilously flawed. Those conspicuous signals, they are decoys. The conscious veneer that most individuals, including the most adept deceivers, have mastered. True manipulators, the victors, do not hemorrhage information through clumsy overt gestures. They leak through the fissures you were never instructed to observe. Cracks so infinitesimal, so nuanced, that 99% of the population, even elite federal investigators, overlook them in the heat of the moment. Dr. Paul Ekman spent decades charting facial micro-expressions, ephemeral bursts of emotion lasting less than a quarter of a second. He demonstrated that a liar can suppress macro-expressions, but the subconscious remains treacherous if you possess the map. Yet even Ekman conceded, micro-expressions are merely the threshold. The authentic power resides deeper, in the shadow psychology most academics are too timid to explore. Because once you descend there, the delusion that humanity is fundamentally good evaporates. Observe the first dark mechanism. It is termed baseline deviation. Every soul possesses a natural cadence, a rhythm to their syntax, their movement, their respiration, when they are at equilibrium. The instant an individual diverges from that baseline, without external provocation, a hidden agenda is activating. But here's the distortion no one mentions. The most malignant actors do not deviate when they fabricate. They deviate when they speak the truth about a reality they wish was a lie. Contemplate that. An infidel might maintain a chilling composure while confessing a betrayal, but their vocal cords tighten, their blink rate accelerates when they utter the words "I love you," because that fragment lacerates their shadow self, the entity that recognizes they are dismantling something sacred. The second dark mechanism, a symmetry of contempt. You are familiar with the Duchenne smile, the authentic expression that crinkles the eyes, but contempt, pure contempt, is almost exclusively asymmetrical. A single corner of the mouth constricts, just one side, for a fleeting microsecond. It is the shadow signal that someone feels inherently superior morally, intellectually, or emotionally. Politicians broadcast it incessantly. Narcissists wear it like a fragrance. And the most unsettling realization, once you begin to perceive it, you will realize how frequently it is weaponized against you. The third dark mechanism, when a subject addresses an inquiry, observe not the content, but the velocity. Standard individuals pause momentarily before complex responses. Liars often respond with suspicious rapidity, a rehearsed defense. They pause, even on the most mundane questions, to mirror your rhythm and fabricate a hollow rapport. This is pacing and leading, a doctrine of dark neurolinguistic programming. They synchronize their respiration, their blink rate, even their verbal cadence, until your mirror neurons ignite, and suddenly you trust them, without a shred of evidence. But the deepest shadow, the one that alters the entire landscape, is that we are all complicit. Not always consciously, not always with malice, but your brain is hardwired to manipulate, to decipher, to dominate for its own survival. Freud identified it as the id. Jung labeled it the shadow. Modern neuroscience defines it as the adaptive unconscious. And here is the forbidden truth. The victors in this world are not those who suppress the shadow. They are those who integrate it. They recognize the game, embrace the darkness, and dictate when to strike, while the remainder of humanity remains somnambulant, pretending the abyss does not exist. So if your education has been a fallacy, if the genuine signals are cloaked in the shadows, then what are the authentic stratagems? The ones that function instantly, every time. The ones that transform you from the victim of the strings into the one who sees the puppeteer. That is our next destination. Because I am about to unveil the 7 forbidden techniques that the elite 1% utilize to read anyone like a transparent manuscript, even when they are exerting every ounce of will to remain hidden. And the first will compel you to question every interaction you have ever experienced. We have arrived at the crucible, the 7 dark psychological mechanisms that empower you to dissect any persona instantly, not through conjecture, not through amateurish cues, but by infiltrating the shadow mechanisms that expose the sequestered mind. These are not trivialities. They are weapons of perception, forged in the relentless fires of evolutionary psychology, validated by decades of empirical rigor from institutions like Harvard's Social Cognition and Emotion Lab, where they have scrutinized how the brain hemorrhages truths it desperately seeks to bury, wield them with absolute precision, because illumination of this magnitude alters your fundamental nature. First mechanism, the pupil pulse. Eyes are not mere windows, they are biological polygraphs. When a subject encounters a stimulus that is arousing, menacing, or deceptive, their pupils dilate, defying conscious control. It is an autonomic reflex, tethered to the sympathetic nervous system, Observe this in dim lighting, where the reaction is most transparent. A sudden expansion, during a seemingly benign inquiry, they are concealing attraction, terror, or a fabrication. But the authentic mastery: establish the baseline first, inquire about the mundane, catalog the diameter, then penetrate deeper. If the pupil flares, you have struck a nerve. Second, vocal entropy. Linguistic output is not just data, it is a pattern of chaos. Sincere individuals speak with a natural variance, peaks, valleys, erratic pauses. The deceptive, they overcorrect. Their pitch stabilizes. The syntax flows with a suspicious uniformity, like a recital. Research in the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior confirms entropy plummets 30% during a lie. Listen for the stagnation. The shadow is attempting and utterly failing to camouflage the internal turbulence. Third, the haptic echo. Physical contact reveals what the tongue suppresses. When an individual engages in self-soothing, grazing the neck, the forearms, the face, it is pacifying behavior, a relic from the subconscious defense manual. But the dark nuance: observe what they touch immediately after you speak. If they mimic your gesture, reflexively, it signifies a desperate rapport or a calculated attempt to manipulate, a mismatch, hidden antagonism. Fourth, cognitive load fracture. Deploy a compound interrogation, a query with multiple layers. Where were you stationed last night, and who accompanied you, and why was your communication severed? The honest respond with fluidity, processing in coherent blocks. The deceptive will fracture. They will reiterate your words, buy time with linguistic fillers, because maintaining a consistent fabrication overloads the prefrontal cortex. fMRI data from UC San Diego is irrefutable. Deception ignites the brain like a catastrophic event. Exploit that congestion and witness the collapse. Fifth, the baseline betrayal cluster. Never gamble on a solitary signal. Elite reading demands clusters, 3 or more deviations occurring in tandem. Sudden pedal agitation, coupled with a diverted gaze, coupled with a laryngeal clearing, that is no coincidence. That is the shadow orchestra, performing a symphony of agony. Isolated tells are a coin flip. Clusters, they are 90% definitive. Sixth, the emotional congruence test. Provoke an affect, and observe if the alignment holds. State something inflammatory. I imagine you harbored deep resentment when that occurs. A genuine reaction, immediate congruence. The verbalization matches the micro-expression. Incongruence, a flicker of rage, instantly masked by a hollow laugh. It is the id escaping its cage, before the ego can reassert dominance. Seventh, and most omnipotent, the silence probe. After they finish speaking, maintain total silence. Fixate your gaze for 5, 10, 15 seconds. The majority will vomit the truth into the void, sharing details they never intended to release. This is expectancy violation. The shadow abhors the vacuum. It compels a confession to alleviate the pressure. Master these 7, and you have awakened a preternatural faculty. But here is the final cognitive shift. Deciphering others is not about subjugation, it is about liberation. Once you perceive the orchestrations, the hidden agendas, the subtle power dynamics, you cease to react. You begin to respond from a position of absolute clarity. You integrate your own shadow, accepting that every soul, including yourself, harbors malevolent impulses. And in that acceptance, you become unreadable, invulnerable. Because the ultimate achievement is not reading them, it is rewriting the architecture of your own existence. Apply these, starting this moment. In your next encounter, detect the pupil pulse, sense the vocal entropy, watch the world metamorphose. The masses remain in a trance. By reaching this conclusion, you have chosen to awaken. Align yourself with the 1% who perceive the void, and as you step into this newfound awareness, one chilling question remains. When you finally decode the hidden depravity in everyone around you, what shadows will you unearth within yourself? fMRI data from UC San Diego is irrefutable. Deception ignites the brain like a catastrophic event. Exploit that congestion and witness the collapse. Fifth, the baseline betrayal cluster. Never gamble on a solitary signal. Elite reading demands clusters, 3 or more deviations occurring in tandem. Sudden pedal agitation coupled with a diverted gaze, coupled with a laryngeal clearing. That is no coincidence. That is the shadow orchestra, performing a symphony of agony. Isolated tells are a coin flip. Clusters, they are 90% definitive. Sixth, the emotional congruence test. Provoke an affect and observe if the alignment holds. State something inflammatory. I imagine you harbor deep resentment when that occurs. A genuine reaction? Immediate congruence. The verbalization matches the microexpression. Incongruence? A flicker of rage, instantly masked by a hollow laugh. It is the id escaping its cage before the ego can reassert dominance. Seventh, and most omnipotent, the silence probe. After they finish speaking, maintain total silence. Fixate your gaze for 5, 10, 15 seconds. The majority will vomit the truth into the void, sharing details they never intended to release. This is expectancy violation. The shadow abhors the vacuum. It compels a confession to alleviate the pressure. Master these 7, and you have awakened a preternatural faculty. But here is the final cognitive shift. Deciphering others is not about subjugation. It is about liberation. Once you perceive the orchestrations, the hidden agendas, the subtle power dynamics, you cease to react. You begin to respond from a position of absolute clarity. You integrate your own shadow, accepting that every soul, including yourself, harbors malevolent impulses. And in that acceptance, you become unreadable, invulnerable, because the ultimate achievement is not reading them. It is rewriting the architecture of your own existence. Apply these, starting this moment. In your next encounter, detect the pupil pulse. Sense the vocal entropy. Watch the world metamorphose. The masses remain in a trance. By reaching this conclusion, you have chosen to awaken. Align yourself with the 1% who perceive the void. And as you step into this newfound awareness, one chilling question remains. When you finally decode the hidden depravity in everyone around you, what shadows will you unearth within yourself?